Welcome to Confessions of a Parent Coach. I'm Coach, a mother of four, and potty talker, Ann Kaplan. This is the podcast where I confess something from my own parenting and coaching life, teach a lesson around it, and answer your questions. Even we parenting experts are far from perfect, and the real magic happens when we get down with all that imperfection. We get into the gritty side of parenting here, so earbud up and dive in.
Welcome into another episode of the podcast, listener. I am excited to be here with you again today. I am getting over a cold, so you can hear my little nasally voice. I do not sound sultry and sexy. I just sound like I'm even more from the Midwest than I already sound. But I'm at that deeply satisfying part of a cold where every time you blow your nose, you're like, that's it. I got it all out, which you're not. That's not true. There's more to come, but it just feels really deeply satisfying. You have these moments of like, oh, I can breathe through my nose. I don't have to cough. It's all coming together. I'm going to make it. Um, so, but cold aside, I would never let my own little sniffles get in the way of connecting with you all listeners out there in podcast land. What we're going to talk about today, you saw the name of today's podcast episode, A Walk on the Wild Side. We are going to talk about parenting wildly. We're going to talk about what does it look like to parent without limits, from a place of freedom, without limiting ourselves, that kind of thing. And the reason why is because this is a huge theme in the retreat that I run in the fall. Well, this year, it's a huge theme in the retreat that I'm going to be running this fall. So you'll hear a little bit more about the retreat. Registration is open for the retreat right now. There actually, believe it or not, only 2 spots remaining. This is what happens every year with the retreat. So I run this retreat every year in October, Northern Michigan. I want you to picture yourself like surrounded by beautiful colors. It is purposely the weekend that I pick every October because that is the peak of color change in my area near Traverse City, Michigan. So I want you to picture that you're surrounded by breathtaking fall colors. And if you've never been to a Midwest or an Eastern fall, Northeastern fall, you don't know what fall really looks like. It really looks like God has come down with a paintbrush and just gone crazy. And so picture yourself surrounded by those beautiful, vibrant colors, staring out at the lake, sitting by the fire pit, having great conversation, eating delicious food cooked by a chef. This is what we do every October. And this year, the theme for the retreat is Motherhood Untamed. That's the official name of the retreat. And so that's what we're going to talk about today is this walk on the wild side. And as always, I'm going to start us off with a confession. And my confession for you, which might be surprise actually, because I'm pretty transparent and vulnerable, I think, as a coach and here in my podcast. But the truth is that I am a very self-controlled person. I might even say that I'm a very buttoned up person. And because of that, I can be very tightly wound. So any of my friends, really super close friends, or my sisters, my parents probably could tell you that I am pretty strict with myself. I really try to control myself very tightly. There are things that are okay. There are things that are not okay. I don't like breaking rules. I'm not super like happy-go-lucky, wild, joie de vivre kind of person. And I don't necessarily know if that qualifies as a confession because it's just a character trait that I have, but it absolutely ties into this idea of motherhood untamed, or, kind of wild, unfettered parenting. And I'm going to give you 2 examples. So one of the things that I'm super controlled about is the emotion of anger. I have a lot of hangups about allowing myself to be angry, behaving angrily. I really try to control myself when it comes to anger. And I'll give you an example that happened in the recent past. Really, I think just a few weeks ago, my 15-year-old daughter and I where I did a really cool mom thing. She was getting ready for the prom, and I took her out of school early one day so we could get pedicures together and she could get ready for the prom. And she's 15. She's just like any other teenager, pretty self-involved, not super aware of, the great things that are happening around her. I would say that she's not very gratitude forward as a person in general. And as our pedicure went on, I became more and more frustrated, not because she, hadn't thanked me for the pedicure, but because while she's receiving this amazing, little treat of getting a pedicure and skipping school a little bit, she's just asking me for more and more stuff. She doesn't want to go back to school after the pedicure. She thinks we should go and get boba. That's like the constant request right now from my daughter. Boba, boba, boba. Can we go get boba? I want to go shopping for this. You need to buy me that. Blah, 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 blah. And I guess found myself wanting to explode on her and just be like, you are so selfish. Like, do you not recognize like everything that's being done for you? That morning, I almost forgot this part. That morning when I took her to school, she's like, well, you're picking me up in the middle of my lunch period. So maybe you should just pick me up earlier and we can go get lunch beforehand. And I said, well, I really can't do that. And she's like, well, why not? Mad at me that not only you know, I'm going to get this pedicure, but you should also take me out for lunch. And I was like, because I have other things going on in my day. I'm a human being that exists not just to facilitate you and your happiness. Like there are things that I do during a day that aren't about you, and I just kept getting so frustrated and frustrated. But instead of allowing myself to be irritated with her and actually expressing that to her in a healthy way, like saying, Gigi, I'm starting to get really frustrated because this and this, and here you are doing that, and I just don't like it, and so sorry, but I don't want to take you to get boba. Instead, I just kept telling myself, like, she's a teenager, she's selfish, that's normal for her age, there's no point in shaming her for her natural proclivity. You're taking things personally, like you're not allowed to be angry, basically. And that is a really common theme for me of just basically kind of having these governors on myself. I did it also when my eldest son was really struggling in his freshman year and behaving in ways that were incredibly hurtful. I was afraid to be angry with him because I thought, maybe this will push him over the edge and then he'll start, doing heroin or something like that. And but mostly the reason why I don't allow myself to be angry is because I have rules for myself that basically say like being angry is bad. It's not okay to be angry. And I think that we all have things like this. We all have rules that we have self-imposed on ourselves, but we also have rules that are kind of just put in front of us by society or what has been normalized for us. So another example for my own life is I always wanted to give my children an alternative education. I've been drawn to, for example, the Waldorf school for years and years and years. But in my mind, investing in private school would be way too posh and snooty. And if public school is good enough for me, why isn't it good enough for my kids? So I put that governor on myself, that rule that like, my kids aren't, that's not the kind of people we are. And that's not the kind of parent that I am, instead of allowing myself, to face the truth of like, well, actually, this is who I am. And what happens when we put those governors on ourselves, when we control and manage ourselves and put ourselves in boxes to make ourselves more palatable for the people around us, or because we're afraid to, be the kind of person or have the kind of behaviors that maybe we judge, it doesn't work. Like eventually you lose your temper. Eventually I did lose my temper on my son in such an outrageous and explosive way that then I really was ashamed of it. Eventually I did speak, short tempered to my daughter and say, no, I don't want to go to boba with you. And I didn't speak to her for the rest of the day. And the same thing with the Waldorf school, by the way. I've got 2 kids in Waldorf school right now. And instead of their experience at Waldorf school being partially like unlearning and undoing some of the damage that their experience at other schools has caused. If I had just acknowledged and allowed myself to be a little bit more free in my parenting, they could have gone there much earlier and, foregone some of those, really unfortunate experiences that they had had. So, my question to you right now on the podcast, and this is the question that we are going to be exploring during the retreat, is who would you be if you didn't manage and limit yourself? If you didn't put boundaries on yourself to make yourself more, palatable for the people around you, more pleasant, etc. I mean, for goodness sakes, we could spend the rest of the podcast talking about all the ways, especially women, but people in general, of course, really sort of manage themselves and soften themselves to be not too abrasive, not too aggressive, not offensive, et cetera, et cetera. But who would you be if you didn't do that? And how would you parent if there were no limits? How would you parent if you were not put yourself in that box? If you were not, holding yourself back? This is what we're going to be talking about at the retreat. And we're going to be talking about it and exploring it in many different ways. Lots of creative exercises designed to sort of get you just right outside your comfort zone. Still fun, still exciting. We're not putting you out in the stratosphere, but just right on that growth edge. And lots of tools and skills that help us to explore the concept of freedom and really allowing ourselves to sort of break free. We all have a wildness inside us, our natural organic state, who we would be. And it is my belief that all of us are better people and better parents when we integrate all those aspects of ourselves instead of sequestering part of ourselves as, forbidden. And one of the tools that we're going to be using, this, it's not the focus of the entire retreat, but one of the tools that we're going to be using on the retreat is the Enneagram. And one of the reasons why is because the language that the Enneagram uses, a lot of the texts and things that you can read about the Enneagram, you hear people talking a lot about each Enneatype's path to freedom. And that really got me thinking a little bit about there's really kind of two definitions or two meanings of that word freedom. Like in the Enneagram, when we talk about, you know, each type's path to freedom, what we're really talking about is their path to become free from our own constructed prison that we put ourselves in. Either the rules that we have, the fears that we have, the limits that we put on ourselves. Working the Enneagram, doing our own personal work, integrating all these parts of ourselves, these are the steps that we take to become free from that, to embrace the unique you-ness or the unique me-ness of me and the unique you-ness of you, and have that actually be the thing that you use to steer you, your actual unfettered, totally integrated, complete self. So that's one way that we can talk about freedom. Obviously, we have this other idea of freedom, which is free from external obstacles, free from maybe the constraints that a partner might put on us, or our friend group puts on us, or our parents put on us, or when we come up against something that feels really insurmountable, like, oh, well, for example, this school seems like it's the perfect fit for my child, but I can't afford it. Okay, but what if you could? If you didn't have that obstacle, how would you parent and how would you find a solution to that obstacle instead of letting it be this thing that stops you in your tracks? And for a lot of moms, I can tell you, because this is not my first year running this retreat, simply coming on the retreat is an act of freedom. It's an act of rebellion. It's an act of going beyond limits. Because let's be honest, as parents, as moms, it is very, very easy for us to come up with a huge list of reasons why we can't do something or this thing isn't for us. It's too expensive. The timing is tricky. There's logistics that we have to work out for childcare, or maybe we've never left our kids before, or on and on and on and on, right? All these things. For so many, every single year when I run this retreat, there's at least a couple moms who come on this retreat. And the very act of coming on the retreat, it was the biggest act of healing that they ever could have done, because it took them really deciding to commit that radical act of letting themselves be wild and free from their kids for a few days, free from judgment of themselves or judgment from other people, free from, the scarcity mindset that keeps us from investing in ourselves. Like, coming on this retreat for you might be the most rebellious, the most freeing, the most unburdening of yourself you've done in the entire time you've been a parent. So think about freedom. Think about, who would you be if you didn't manage and limit yourself? And how would you parent? Because I'll give you my opinion about all those examples that I gave you. I would have been 10 times a better parent if I had allowed myself permission, if I had removed that governor on myself and allowed myself to freely and healthily express, I'm very angry with you right now, and here's why. Or, you know what? I think this school is the best fit for our kids, even though, maybe it didn't fit my rubric of, what it means to be a good parent, or what I was going to be like as an adult, or what my financial landscape was going to look like. All of those acts of little bits of courage would have served my children so much better than the sort of stranglehold on controlling myself and putting myself in a box could ever serve them. So think about that. And if you're interested in the retreat, now is the time to reach out. Like I said, there's only 2 spots left. This is what happens every year, because before I start telling everybody, so before you hear about it on the podcast, before you get an email about it in your inbox, I open up enrollment for the retreat to a really small group of people who've come on the retreat before, people who are already working with me one-on-one. And because of that, I'm telling you, it's a testament to how great this retreat is that people keep coming back. I have people who have come every single year who are coming again this year. So now here I am, just beginning to tell the whole wide world about this retreat, and there's really only 2 spots left. Can you believe it? So if this is calling to you, you have got to check it out. Go to my website, AnnKaplanParentCoach.com, and then just put a little /fall retreat. It's really easy to remember. And of course, there's a link in the show notes. Check it out. It is a fabulous harmony of luxurious pampering and really just mind expanding coaching work. We go on excursions, we go on hikes, we go check out local towns, we go shopping. We have a chef that cooks for us the whole time. You get a massage that's included in your enrollment. We're spending time in nature, and at the same time, we do work with the Enneagram, like I mentioned. We do coaching circles. We do creative exercises that help us to kind of grow and expand. It is just a really, really beautiful experience. And I'm not speaking hyperbolically when I say that I have gotten the feedback that this retreat is life-changing from multiple clients. So think about it. I would love to have you. I'd love to have you be one of those lucky few that are still out there enrolling in this retreat and taking up those last 2 spots, and really start to consider what it would be like if you didn't have to make yourself fit into some sort of a mold as a parent, and start to get courageous about giving your kids that gift. Maybe. I'm very proud of myself. I made it through this whole podcast without coughing. And I cannot wait to talk to you again next time with my normal voice. Bye, everybody.
The episode is over, but there's more waiting for you. You can grab my free workbook, Getting Kids to Listen the First Time, that walks you through the fundamental principles I teach all of my clients and applies them to this very universal parenting challenge. So if you're sick of repeating yourself all day long, or just want to learn more about my style, you'll definitely want to go to bit.ly/kidswholisten. And if you're ready to work with me, let's meet. Set up a free call at bit.ly/Kaplan call, and let's create an action plan that gets you exactly where you want to go. And of course, links to all this goodness are in the show notes. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.